Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Talk. I have made these quite consistently at this point. When it comes to the last 3 weeks, usually there's like a month interval, and I'm like, I've made a discovery, although probably not, and I'm just feeling crazy. Let's talk to myself for a while until we feel less crazy. Although this time I have just something that kind of makes sense, rather than like, let's contemplate ideas. I hope it's focused, by the way, because that'd be really shit if it wasn't. But weirdly enough, I had like the spur of the moment impulse of being like, you know what? I want to read an audiobook, and I want to learn, basically. I want to learn again. It's been a while since I got out of high school, and I've been doing YouTube, and I've been working the job and all these things, and I've been learning, editing stuff, kinda. But I haven't really like learned. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. Maybe not, but I haven't, and I've always been like, okay, well, I think a good way to learn is, to read books, and to read and gain information that way, hear smart people talk, and explain their point of view, and what they believe, and what they think, and how that works, and etc. Keep hitting the mic, goddammit. But when it comes to all of those things, one book came to mind more so than ever, and I always knew that I wanted it to be like the first book that I read. Or not read, listened to. I would have liked to read along, just so that I'm not getting stupid. I just don't want to have to be hindered by my slow reading, which I realize you get faster when you read consistently, but still. I wanted to read this one book. And this one book was Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Now I'm not really actually not true. I do really like inspirational, keep pushing forward, keep trying new things, don't give up, blah, 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 blah. Self-help books, kind of, the self-help mentality. But it's never been something that I've truly bought into. I haven't spent money on self-help stuff, right? I've just listened to videos here or there, heard people how they push through things when it's available to me and things like that. Lo and behold, I find myself in the mood spontaneously to actually download a book. Or to learn, and I was like, okay, well, this is the first book that I really wanted to do that with, so let's do it. Took some navigating to get it to not cost $46, which is insane for me. Which is like, a book costs that much? Jesus Christ! But it was on Audible, which I guess they jack up the prices because of their monthly subscription. They want you to buy into that. So long story short, it doesn't matter how I attained the book. I got it. I started listening to it. Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. And oh my god, again, I don't know where people stand when it comes to political stuff. I don't want to get into any of that. To me, personally, I really like the guy. I think he's just wonderful, amazing. Even before I read the book, or I'm currently reading the book, even before I listened to any of that, just hearing him explain his perspective is amazing. And how he stops and thinks before he speaks, I think is also wonderful. And yeah, anyways, moving away from that part of it, the book itself, I think is just wonderful, honestly. I know that's weird because everyone just it's the best book ever, it's so good. And again, I haven't read many self-help books, so I don't know that. And it's weird because it's not at least to me, it doesn't feel like some sort of, and I think that's why it's so successful, is it doesn't feel bro-y. I feel like a lot of self-help books or people who preach have that feeling, where people are very preachy. That feeling where people are constantly preachy and they're like, listen, bro, you just put your head down on the grindstone and you fucking do it. You do it, man. And it's like, okay, I mean, sure, that can work for some people, get them riled up to do it. But a lot of people, a lot of us, don't feel that way. I feel like a lot of people, we need greater context to do things. We need greater examples to do things. And I think that's what makes him so well done, is that I think it took him 8 years to make, and he constantly talks about how he had to do revisions constantly in the book, but to basically attack something from every possible angle so that you fully understand that rule, the reason why it existed from way back in the day when the Western world was ruled by religious ideology and things like that, to the throwing us forward into modern day, and how just examples of doing this specific thing with yourself can have this outcome. And the reason why the reason why it has this outcome is because of this, right? And I enjoy thus far. I think I'm 4 rules in, and I've just enjoyed the whole of it. I think it's just wonderful. First rule, I don't think it's a spoiler to explain the rules so much as it is to explain all of the things that come with them, which is impossible because it's like a 24-hour book. But anyways, one of the things is the first one. Oh damn it, it's something else. But it's like stand up straight and don't be afraid to be there. And again, one of the things, and I want to go through every chapter, but one of the things, I'm not sure I'll go through every chapter, but one of the things in that first column is he makes a lot of it is him making a correlation with domination culture, or not culture. I think he talks about how lobsters have like a dominative society, basically, where things are ruled by the strongest and they take what they want, and when you lose you feel lesser and shit, and it makes you gain less women and things like that. It goes into that a little bit. That bit's not what I really gained from it. What I gained from it is one of the things he talks about is if you're a person that doesn't like conflict and you try to see the good in things, and when it comes to talking, you can oftentimes feel like your opinion may not be necessary, and or you basically don't feel like you have the confidence or reason to speak. So if you're quiet, this is going to be a challenge, because the ideas that he talks about are very, at least to me, pretty complex and like hard enough to wrap your head around. Not hard enough to wrap your head around. So that's the worst way of wording it. It's so much, and he explains the reason for things so much in vivid, visceral detail. Like it's a lot. And he goes into every possible angle so that you can understand, well, there's a reason why I came up with this rule. It's not just like, fuck it. That sounds nice. Here you go. But anyways, he talks about the domination culture, lobsters, and how that exists within us to a certain extent, or can be. And I don't think he wants people to be like super like, ooh. I don't think he's going after that world. I think he's trying to get people to realize it's not negative to have that part of yourself. Which is funny because recently, a couple Let's Talks back, we talked about the wanting, like, not being afraid to stand up for yourself and things like that. And he went into a specific sentence that really, like, I was like, oh, and it was weird because sometimes he hits on things that are like really on the mark. Like one of the things he was talking about like when it comes to communication, oftentimes people can be like, oh, I don't have anything to really say, so I just don't speak that much. An insular and or extrovert person will be like oftentimes quiet. But one of the things he talked about is, well, maybe, just maybe, it's that you don't feel like you would have the respect when you're speaking to that person. So say you're like a group of friends, and you're always known as a quiet person. And oftentimes when you speak anything, it gets thrown under the rug, or no one really pays attention, no one really gives you credit. So then in the back of your mind, you're like, well, no one really, interacts or engages with whenever I say. So I don't really feel incentivized to say anything because no one seems to really care whenever I say anything. And then that builds up, and then you may eventually find yourself settling in that where, oh, no one really wants to hear what I have to say, so I'm just not going to say it. That's incredibly terrible. Like it's like, it's like you're letting other people determine your voice, which is bad, but also your confidence. Like, and like one of the things in the whole dominative society or culture, I think is what he called it, domination culture. Within lobsters, he says that was one of those things where it's like you can feel like you can say something, like you should understand the level of respect that you have at your own level. And then he goes even further into this, which is my favorite chapter by far. I've listened to it like 2 or 3 times, but it's funny because it's an old trope. I think this is the 3rd rule, but it's be better than you were yesterday. So you've always kind of heard that, right? Where it's like, hey, constantly keep being better, pursue your goals, improve, all these things. But again, unlike just saying, hey dude, just never give up and constantly keep improving and you'll eventually get there, he goes into like the meticulous science of it and also the history of it and all those things. And yeah, one of the things that my favorite thing, which I already knew, he talked about it in like one of his lectures, which I watched, but he talks about human beings. Man, there's so much to like, and I can't word it like he can, but what I can say is, one of the greatest exercises that you can do if you want to improve is to treat yourself like you are a broken house. Or not a broken house, just a house. So you need to get out of your own headspace, out of the conscious self, and then just like you were to go buy a house, you would want to get a contractor? Not a contractor. a person that looks over the house to see if there's any problems before you buy it, right? And then that person will go in and it will find all the problems of the house. Maybe there's some giant glaring issues which you really want to try to address as soon as possible. Maybe there's some little dings and broken parts here or there that you can easily fix. But first of all, you need to do that. You need to first take yourself out of the equation, look at yourself objectively, and then find those problems so that you can become better. But going through with that line of thinking, when it comes to getting yourself to do things, waking up on at a certain time, cleaning the dishes, mowing the lawn, doing homework, and those kinds of things, he talks about the idea of being a good boss. And being a better employee, or being a good employee, be a better boss, is what he says. So basically this is reasoning with yourself. So if you have to go mow the lawn, and again, the way my brain manifests in a weird way is the way I take this information and apply it, is I think of myself in a chair across from me, and I'm also here. But that person that I'm looking at is someone else. Not someone else, but is me. And it's funny because if you do this with yourself constantly, where you're thinking about it in this way, where like yourself is in a chair, but your other self is here, and this is your objective self. A lot of people, if you think about self-hatred or self-doubt or anxiety, it's that person who's sitting in the chair, and that's your core being, them yelling malice at them constantly, being like, you're terrible, you're worthless, you're gonna fail, you're gonna be shitty. No wonder this person's gonna fucking fail and do horrible, because its boss is just a trash human who does nothing but shit all over him. So of course he's gonna be fucking anxiety ridden, terrible, he's not gonna perform well, it's gonna be terrible. So then if you take the inverse of that, and instead of being so evil and just hateful to your own self, instead of you take it from the other perspective and be like, hey, I want to be nice to my employee, because this is my number one employee. He's gonna be with me to the fucking bitter end. He has to be. That's me. I'm gonna do my best. And he even goes, again, in his book, he goes into like him talking to himself to an extent, and being like, be kind to yourself. Treat yourself with some fucking respect. Negotiate with yourself. Negotiate with that person so that you're more incentivized to do that. So if you're both sitting across from each other and you needed to, I don't know, a classic problem is like homework. Homework, a lot of people fucking hate. So if you're in school and you have to do homework, but you're just not getting around to it, you're letting it ruin you, constantly fall back into this headspace of you being like, hey, I'm trying to reason with you. I'm trying to get you to work with me, so that we can improve, so that we can get this thing that needs to get done. So then he goes into examples of saying, okay, well, what would I need to do to get you to do that? Do I need to yell at you? Nah, I think you'd probably do a shitty job of doing that. What if I reward you? What if I, give you a salary? And of course, that's just the business terms of it, but instead it could be like, what if we go get a drink? What if we allow ourselves, I don't know, a soda or a pop, or maybe a expensive coffee? Or maybe we go check out that new restaurant, or maybe we I don't know, play a shit ton of that game that we love first. You got to create this reward cycle, and then that person will keep coming back. And to me, that's such a cool and good way of thinking about it, especially with that one piece of knowledge of being like, well, I oftentimes feel like sometimes when I speak, especially in the past, because I grew up with some brothers, so oftentimes I don't know, I don't know, I'm just like the little brother, right? So I oftentimes feel like, I guess in my past, where like people listen to you for 2 seconds and then they tune you out, and that's especially if you want to learn about like how to be good at interacting with people. You don't want to do that at all. You always want to keep engaged with people, smile, try to show that you're enjoying the story they're telling you, the joke they've said. If you want people to like you, it's not that impossible from that perspective. But anyways, oftentimes, I guess in the past, as a little brother and like the youngest in the family, I haven't felt that. I guess I felt, like exactly what he said. Like eventually, at some point, people don't listen to your opinion or what you have to say, so eventually you just kind of don't give it. And then eventually you don't feel worthy to give it. You may not feel like you have anything to say. So in public situations, you just kind of default to listening, being quiet, even though you may really have something to say. But even when you say it, you're quiet. You don't really put much punch in it. You don't really put much effort in explaining it. You give up too fast explaining your point. If it's not getting across and you're having trouble, you just do that. And then he talks about how you should have some fucking respect for yourself. You deserve to speak. You deserve to have that platform. You deserve to, at the very least, give your perspective. They don't have you don't have to force them to listen, which is damn well speak like you own your voice, you know? Again, with full well knowing that no one could listen, but at the very least you should speak. That to me is immensely powerful in general, but then the idea of sitting across from yourself and like having to have that direct, not only accountability, but love. Because the more I keep putting myself into that situation where if like I'm in this chair and then there's present me and my dumbass, by the way, like being the person that's trying to negotiate with myself, being the boss, basically, my dumbass envisions me with glasses and just looking snazzy, I guess, and then talking to my normal clothed self. And I'm like, all right, listen. And when I put myself in this situation, it's funny because I don't really feel this a lot, but I want me to like me, you know? And I want me to do well. And I want me to be happy. So then you start being a very understanding, good, but also structured boss to yourself and how to manage yourself and how to realize that you need to do certain things. Like for me personally, within 2 days of reading the book in that chapter, I found myself in a situation where I was like, oh, I could do something that's very classic me, which is I'm across from a person that I don't speak to, and I've been put in a situation where everyone has gone somewhere else, so it's just me and this person awkwardly kind of existing in the same space. I could do what I do, which is, I don't know, I usually just go back to where there's a group of people and that person usually does the same, or I just fucking leave. So that's less great, but I could do any of those things, or I could be like, you know what, and again, at that moment I didn't need to negotiate with myself. I didn't need to say, what would it take for you to talk to that person, for you to interact with that person? Just what? Because I know you're afraid you're gonna fuck up, or they're not gonna give a shit, or they're not gonna care about what you have to say, and they're just gonna move on, whatever. You know, fear of rejection, or so to speak. What would I need to do that to get you over there? I didn't feel that, because to me it wasn't that bad. It wasn't like that terrible. It wasn't like I didn't want to do it. It was more of me being like, what should I do in this situation, kind of thing. And you default to like the least rough situation, or the path of least resistance. Jesus. But with that one, I was like, okay, well, and just having that accountability where you're sitting across from yourself being like, listen, man, I'm wishing the best for you. And this is the best course for you, is you to have interactions and communications with people, because any communication with anybody is good. You know, if you want a girlfriend later down the line, you're gonna need to know how to talk to anybody, dudes, old people, young people, angry people, happy people, negative people. You're gonna need all of this experience, so just soak up everything. So in that instance, I was like, all right, and I defaulted to what I would deem to be personal things. Like again, like I mentioned, when you're talking to someone, a lesson that I learned from my grandma, who never actually explicitly said it was a lesson, but just so much as something I've garnered from her. When I was really younger, I loved video games to pieces, and no one in my family really did. Or if they did, not to the extent in which I did. Where I love like the lore of games. I love just the worlds that they persuade. I love like the things that they do. I could talk about them for hours, and I do. But my grandma was one of those people that I thought she was just amazing because she did this one thing, but it was pretend to give a shit. So when I talked about like games, she would ask me questions, and she'd at least seem like she was excited. Like I'm 100% sure she was faking it. She probably didn't know what the fuck I was talking about, but she at least pretended to be interested and to be happy and to ask questions so that I could keep just talking about it. And it felt like someone finally got it, and someone let me unleash this part that I love so much and explain why I love it so much and understand more about myself because I was able to explain it. So I defaulted to that as well. Basically, it's one of my own personal rules when it comes to being social, but it's when you're talking to someone, pretend you're enjoying their company, even if you're not. Worst case scenario, you'll have to let them down later down the line, but you can give that person a little bit of levity for a moment, which is great. To when you're talking to someone, to maintain eye contact, sure, that's something to work towards. And that's something I definitely need to get better, just because my brain, the way I think is when I look somewhere else, it re-triggers like a different thought pattern, basically. So sometimes I'm like, which is weird. But anyways, default to looking like you're excited to talk to them, and to be not like I'm so fucking hyped, but to at least be like, okay, great, sweet, awesome. Okay, what did you do? Oh my god, that's amazing. Like, things like that. But anyways, in this situation where I was talking to this person, that's what I did. I defaulted to those things, and it went great. Don't get me wrong, I was definitely in the place where I was just like, I don't really know exactly what to say. What should I exactly say? I don't know. I mean, I'll just say this. I'll ask about this. I'll give my take on this, and then I'll ask another question, which you gotta ask a lot of questions because people like talk about themselves. But nevertheless, that was an instance where I found myself where that immediately came into play. And it's weird because the way he explains it is he explains the background of why you think that way and why you do it that way and why it's important that you do it in that way. It's not just like, again, some sort of nonsense where it's like, you put your head to the ground and you do good. It's not like, you're the best, have confidence. It's like, well, why? Why should you have confidence? What's the importance of confidence? What's the negatives of confidence? Why would you want an aspect of confidence in this situation where you wouldn't in this situation? And he goes into all of that. By the way, the rules are stand up straight, because that first chapter is more about like respecting yourself and not being afraid of conflict necessarily, and building yourself up and standing tall, and kind of like the idea of like when you smile and you try to paint on joy, it does give you a bit of joy, and that does do wonders for you. Like, pretending isn't the end game, but it's certainly a tool that can help you get to the place where you need to be, And the second one is, I feel like I may be missing one, but I think that's what it is. I think the second one is have friends that want to see you go upwards, that get excited when you do well, that build you up, and then he goes into like pretty great examples of just saying like, and if there's people that don't, fuck them. He says it in a very much better way, but to me I'm like, good. Good. Whereas like, nah man, you gotta survive, you gotta do good, and it's one thing to be this and that, it's another thing to have a good friend. Choose friends that want to. And one of the examples he gives for that, which I thought was brilliant, was if you're wondering what I mean by this, having a good friend, one of the examples that he gives is, well, what would you think if this friend that you have was your brother's friend? Or you're like, you're the same friend for you, but in this case, it was your brother's friend. It was your father's friend. It was your mother's friend. So like, for instance, if you had a friend that was super into like drinking and drugs, and maybe he's fun, so you just, you're chill with him and you talk, but would that be a friend you'd want for your brother? You're like, well, I don't know. I don't want my brother to ever get close to that shit. I would like him to, stay on the straight and narrow. What if my dad had that? Well, I don't want my dad to get shit-faced, do something stupid. What if my mom had that friend? I wouldn't mind. And then you start doing it that way. You start taking yourself out of the equation, being like, maybe this person isn't the person I need in my life. And vice versa, if a person was like super negative and like just negative, constantly depressed, refused to get help, all of these things. What if that was your brother's friend, and then you're like, well, I don't want my brother to feel sad, nor do I want him to have to deal with those problems, because one, he's not a professional to deal with those, and two, and you just keep going down the line, and you keep being like, okay, maybe that's a person I shouldn't exactly have in my life, which is bloody interesting to me. I think it's like one of those things where I was stopped and I was just like, that's a pretty good way to vary things, Anyways, that's the second one, and then I think the third one is try to be better than you were yesterday, or be better than you were yesterday. Which, have I talked about that one? Yeah, no, that's the like sitting across from yourself, negotiating with yourself, constantly improving in some way or another. Also, reward yourself is one of the things he hits on, like especially if you accomplish a task. So say if you have to say, oh, I gotta do the dishes, then you're like, okay, I really don't want to do the dishes, but I'll do the dishes, and I'll go get a coffee. He says, don't do the dishes and then mop the floor and then do all those things and then do that, because it's going to be that much harder for you to pull that version of yourself out, because he's been burnt, he's been screwed over. You've taken that childlike wonder and which is exactly what that plays off of, by the way, the whole childlike mentality of like, oh, I get rewarded when I do something good. When you're not rewarding that, doing something good, you're not going to stimulate that part of your brain. Anyways. Then the other one that I just read, which is, it's, even though I don't have a kid, it's still awesome, because it's, again, he goes into like human psyche, which I really like. But anyways, he has a whole chapter about how, like, what is it, like, don't let your kid hate you or something, or don't, basically, if your kid if you hate your child, don't let that happen. Don't let you hating your child happen. It's basically what it is. When he goes into it, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. Like, basically, if you hate your child, you gotta fix it, because you shouldn't hate your child. There's probably reasons why you hate your child, and and maybe you need to look inward to yourself, and it's just a whole bunch of things. It's also parenting stuff. It's really good advice, I think, as a person that doesn't have a child, but it seems good. But that's 4 rules in, and guys, I love it. I love it so much, as well as it is exactly what I wanted in terms of learning, because I really like to listen, and it's just perfect in that sense. And at this point, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make this a thing. I'm definitely doing this more. Like an hour a day. Usually I'll sit down in this chair, this exact chair, and I'll just sit there with my feet up on my one chair, and I'll be like, and I'll just be listening to him talk about examples of why this thing is important, and the next book I think I want to read is America's Before. It's like a old society, and like what humans existed beforehand, and what they did, and what took them out, and all these things. And when it says Americas, it's like the Western world, not like America specifically, I don't think. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was, I may make another one of these, because I haven't finished the book yet, but I don't know, I really like just the prospect of learning again, because it's been a long time since I've like made it at a point. You know, like especially with me and having a weird learning disability kind of thing, where my memory retention is terrible. There's, and I hate this, but there's exceptions to that rule. One of those rules is like philosophy things have always stuck in my head. Whereas math, anything like math or reading or language there's so much that it just blurs into itself, and I can't ever like fully grasp something, and it doesn't set. And even if I fully grasp some things, even if it's like that, like math, where there's so many letters, so many words, so many rules, it just falls away, unfortunately. And again, I try. I don't mean to be like, it just doesn't work. Believe me, I'm not that person to be like, fuck it. I've tried my hardest, and those things don't click always, or they dissipate rapidly. But anyways, yeah, I can't wait to do more of this. I like this so much that I definitely can see it being a habit. And a habit that I want to foster of just listening to a book here or there. Reading would be one, but listening to me is kind of just nice, because you can do it whenever you have just a splash of time. But yeah, no, the 12 rules for life has been nothing but lovely. Oh, I can finally make that video. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I would highly suggest the book. Oh, my hair is doing that weird, like, fucking Superman right now. But, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you enjoyed this. Again, I haven't finished the book. Oh, my only criticism for the book, like the only thing I'm not a fan of, I'm not even sure if I want to put this in the words necessarily, but is I like the things that really like set it in stone for me are the examples and the situations in which you're using that thing. The history of it's kind of cool. The religious aspect to it gets a little funky for me, where it's not that it's bad, just that it's not the thing that like sets the rule in place. To me, it's like using, like, again, the metaphor of like you standing in a chair across from yourself, negotiating with yourself, and then when you're in this intimate state where you're looking at yourself, and he's looking at you, and you're the boss and he's the worker, it creates this feeling of, oh, well, I don't want to be mean to you. I've been in the place where, like, your boss is not great, or your teacher's not great. I want to try to foster the best in you. I'm going to speak to you with respect. I'm going to try to improve you. I'm going to try to do this, and I hope to God you work with me. And as the other person, you're like, yeah, I would work with you. You're trying to make me better, right? But that to me was way better of an example of, instead of going into like religious Adam and Eve thing, which he does on occasion, which makes sense because he's Catholic, and no gripes with that. But that was the only thing where personally, that's where I don't really like align with. So it wasn't exactly like nail on the head for me when it comes to those examples. That was my only like slightly negative thing I have to say. Then again, I'm only 4 rules in. Who knows if the other ones are going to be great? I think they're going to be pretty great though. Anyway, subscribe button above me, 2 videos to my right. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Let me know what you guys think about the ideas or just the book in general. If you've read it, thank you so much and goodbye. Also, if you have any one that's similar or good even still that you'd like to suggest, hit me up. Write it in the comments. I would love to see that. Anyways, bye.